The Celtics whooped the Dallas Mavericks ass. I mean, they kicked it real, real good. All this and more on today's The Celtics Chronicle. Ass kicking. I mean, we've literally pressed stop on the recording right now, and we have done all the analysis we need to do.
Shelling.
Yeah, it was, they were toying with it. It was a cat just chasing its little, like, thing on a string. It was just fun. For Celtics fans, it was fun. NBA Finals, game one in the books. Boston draw first blood. We're going to talk about it. I'm joined by my boy, Tim Shiels. Yo, man. First things first, we need to tip our caps to Kristaps Porzingis. Came off the bench, coming back off, hadn't played since, what was it, April 29th? Game
Think
four
so, yeah.
against Miami. Doesn't play, been injured, probably got held out a little bit longer than he needed to against the Pacers. Comes off the bench against Dallas, his former team. So, you've got that undertone there already. Mavericks fans have been online all day today, like, oh, we're not going to see a Porzingis performance like that again. That was just a fluke. No, it wasn't. This is what Kristaps Porzingis has done all year long. So please, if you're a Mavericks fan watching this and you think what you saw was an outlier, you're going to be rudely, rudely awakened throughout the next few weeks. But for Celtics fans, Porzingis comes off the bench and does what he's done all season: protects the rim, contains ball handlers on pick and rolls. I like the ducking off the screen, set screens, kind of ducks into a random nail, gets the post up, receives the ball, faces up, shoots over his guy. Done some shit in terms of like turning the corner and just attacking the rim. There was that one play where he did that on Derek Lively, caught the ball on the high post, kind of turned the corner on him, and then drove and got that monster jam. Porzingis is just everywhere, dude. And I think if you're not tipping your cap to that, just before we even start talking about the schemes or anything like that, then that's not fair, because this dude must have been breathing out his ass midway after like a minute or two on the floor, because that's a long time to not be on an NBA court.
And he also, came off the bench in what was honestly, a really late decision. I think I saw the Shams tweet maybe, 10 or 15 minutes before tip-off. They said he was gonna be coming off the bench. He ended up netting about 20 minutes, but some of the most efficient basketball we've seen in a while, and, it made all of the difference for the Celtics. That first quarter was insane. On the night, he finished 8 of 13, 2 of 4 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks, a couple of them being massive ones, and 20 points. Again, 20 points in 20 minutes. So very, very efficient, very effective. And it was a dynamic that the Celtics just didn't have on offense. And I also want to give my flowers to Al Horford too, because he was massive defensively. Both of those guys made a huge difference. And to be honest, if Porzingis is able to give you what he's giving you right now, even if it is in those limited kind of spurts or minutes, I just don't see Dallas being able to do what they did in game one and having it have any level of effect on the Celtics, because it's just some of the things that they were trying to do defensively just weren't working. And it's not going to work against a team like the Celtics with the kind of offense that they have, because damn, man, they really were cooking.
They were cooking, like cooking with gas. One of the other reasons I liked the KP coming off the bench was it allowed Boston to match size in the front court. So you have Al Horford matching with Daniel Gafford. Both guys are around 6'10". Jason Tatum's around that height too. So you're matching and then kind of doubling up on the size there. Then Dallas bring Derek Lively off the bench, who's a true 7 foot tall. So the Celtics are like, okay, you want to bring someone that's 7 foot? We got someone that's 7 foot 2. We're going to bring in Porzingis, and you're matching the size. Obviously, they're different types of players. Lively's a little bit more explosive, a little bit more physical. Porzingis is a bit more finesse. But it just meant that you had the rim protection there when there was a lob threat there. And that was a really key aspect of how the Celtics look to defend just in general. So if anyone subscribed to the Celtics Chronicles newsletter, if you're not, the link's down below. You should be reading it, because then you'd know what I'm about to talk about. One of the
Luca
things the
Lobs.
late Luca lobs. And they're called late lobs because they're later than what a normal lob occurs. You run the play, you penetrate, you draw, and then you go into a shooting motion, and really it's a lob. And Derek Lively has been a big recipient of those, and it's a part of how Dallas kind of attack you when you send two at Luke out on the interior. And it's just they didn't get any. I think they got one lob all game. It just wasn't there for them. Part of that was because of how the Celtics were defending. They were switching rather than sending two. They were trusting guys to go one up. But it was also because you've got a Porzingis there where Derek Lively is, and when you draw Porzingis out, you see Jalen Brown kind of rotate over, and he's explosive enough to meet you at the rim, which we saw with a Jalen Brown block as he rotated over as a weak side helper. So not only did it make sense to bring Porzingis off the bench because he's missed so much time, it also gave you that kind of parity in terms of size and gave you the rim protection against the one guy that can play above the rim on Dallas's roster. So that made perfect sense to me. I was a big fan of that kind of matchup, and that was just a little chess move for me. And I think if Derek Lively moves into the starting lineup, I'll be interested to see whether Porzingis kind of mirrors that too, just to keep that size matchup. But limiting those late Luka lobs or just those late lobs in general was a massive kind of win for the Celtics because you could see in the way they were defending, the way they were switching, how high up they were switching, that they wanted to limit those lob attempts, which is why once Luka penetrated, they rarely sent two into that mid-post area. They kind of let you stay, and then they'd send gap help. And that was really important, for me at least, because Luka ended the game with one assist. And we can talk more about the defensive scheme that led to that. But Luka was underwhelming in terms of playmaking.
Yeah, and I think they also did a big thing with having Jalen Brown just play the way he was playing defensively. I mean, finished with 3 steals. He also had 3 blocks, especially that big one that he had on Kyrie, like you said, where he swung over as the help defender. They're going to be doing a lot of stuff to try and disrupt Dallas's offense, and it comes down to making things really, really hard for Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, and that's exactly what they did in Game 1. Luka had an amazing offensive performance, like he was scoring lights out. You could not say the same thing about Kyrie Irving. And if you look at the playmaking, sure, I think that they kind of put Luka on an island. They said, hey, you know what? Go ahead and beat your man one-on-one. We're not giving you any lobs. We're going to take away these kind of second chance points by cleaning up the boards, trying to stop guys like Lively having a big night. And for all the credit you got to give to Boston, especially with the way that Mazzulla's been coaching them up, it felt like they were ready for this moment and they knew what they needed to throw at Dallas in order to really throw their offense out. Now, I wasn't stoked about the third quarter. Like, the third quarter was pretty bad. But the fact is like, it took Dallas having that much of a third quarter, and then they still, at the end of the night, 107-89 is the final score. So even with Boston having a third quarter like they did, because they were so explosive in the first half, in that first quarter, outscoring them 37-20, I think, that kind of just carries over for the rest of the game. And at that point, they locked in, I want to say with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter, they locked in. Dallas had cut the lead down. And from that point on, I think Boston outscored them 35-25 from that 4-minute mark in the third quarter through the rest of the game. So being able to lock in and key in on their key guys on defense really seemed to swing this game. And I think Dallas tried to do the same thing with Jason Tatum. They were throwing 3 bodies at him consistently, but that's just not a strategy that's going to work against the Celtics. It's just not, because you have guys like Porzingis and Brown and Holiday, and Hauser started to get some shots to go down. And I think that in itself is going to be big for this series too.
First things first, I want to give Hauser a tip of the cap. It's tip of the cap time. He played some good defense on Doncic when Doncic was trying to hunt him. And look, when it comes to sending 2 or 3 at the ball when you're defending the Celtics, that's not a strategy. As you said, it's not a strategy that's going to work for 2 reasons. One, you've got 5 3-level scorers on the floor. Now, for anyone that's like, what's a 3-level scorer? That's fine, fair enough. You score around the rim, you can score in the mid-range, you can score on the perimeter. All 5 of them can put the ball on the floor. And when I'm saying 5, this is an 8-man rotation. I feel confident about any of those 8 attacking a closeout off the dribble. Any of them. Houses added into his game this year. 1 or 2 dribble pull up off the baseline, 1-2 dribble pull up off the slot or the top of the perimeter, and then go from there. Every one of them can attack off the dribble. 5, 6, I'd say 6 out of the 8 of them, you can say 7 if you want to include Pritchard here, can create off the dribble for themselves and for others. So you send 2, you send 3 at the ball, and it's Jason Tatum you're forcing to make that read. He's made those reads all year. He's seeing over the defense. He's allowing the defense to come to him. He's reading the floor and making the right pass. When you do that, you're putting the defense straight in rotation. You'll see it'll go pass, 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 and then in the corner, drive, spray the ball. And Tatum's just triggered this entire offensive like rotation. And the defense is screwed because they're loading up to the ball. And you saw this from Dallas multiple times. They overloaded the strong side. They just kept sending bodies into the strong side. And again, if you read the newsletter, you'd be up on like kind of where I'm going with this now. Links in the description. I will stop plugging it, but I'm trying to get to 1,000 sub.
Plug away, dude.
Both on here and on the newsletter, so let's get it going. But when we're talking about actual defensive strategy, Dallas they like to collapse. They like to send bodies into the paint, take away the elbows, take away the 45 cut, and take away around the rim. Because they only have one genuine 7-footer, it's a lot of rim protection by committee. So you'll see guys driving, you'll see 2, 3, 4 bodies kind of just all sink on him and force him to make a silly pass. You saw Jalen Brown kind of pass it into the stands because of the pressure that comes when there's a few heads coming at you. That's fine. You can't do that against this Celtics team. That's not going to work because most of the time, Brown's making the right read out of that collapse. Kristaps Porzingis can see over all of his. He's just making the read because he can see who's around him. Tatum can make that read. So Dallas are going to have to kind of reevaluate their entire defensive system that got them this far because it's not going to work. There's too much spacing everywhere. And we'll talk about the pill switches in a moment. I'll let you talk because I'm taking up too much oxygen. I thought overall, I think that Dallas's defense left a lot to be desired, and there's going to need to be a lot of adjustment if they want to be able to at least hang with Boston's offense, right? And a lot of that falls on Luka. Luka let a lot of blow-bys happen. He didn't rotate well. His feet looked a little bit heavy. He's going to be better. But overall, yeah, Mavs defense needs some adjusting.
It still felt like they did a lot with Tatum in terms of like throwing multiple bodies, but they also forced Tatum into 6 turnovers, and a couple of those were really bad, where it was like just a scrambled pass when the defense collapsed, just a couple ones, like you said, throwing into the stands or throwing behind guys or, tipped passes that turned into turnovers and so on. They were playing really, really physical on Tatum the entire night, and a couple times where it was very much, you could tell that they were trying to put the whistle away because there was a couple drives where there was a lot of contact on Tatum. Now, I don't want Tatum to change his approach. I want him to obviously make some better reads and not panic in a couple of those situations. And he acknowledged it too after the game. I can't have that many turnovers, way too many turnovers. So if he can dial that back, and I want him to work a little bit more inside. He did take a lot of threes. He hit a few, but he definitely shouldn't be taking 7 threes if they've got, the need to try and cut inside, especially as you said, with Dallas having, one real true 7-footer on their roster. But what they ended up doing, like Dallas was, having someone meet him out in the perimeter. And like you said, having a defender at the elbow and then another guy to meet him at the rim. They were doing everything they could to try and throw Tatum off his game. And it still was an 18-point loss. And that was with the Celtics having the third quarter that they did. It's just really, really difficult when you look at all of the guys who can play make, who can hit shots, who can do all of the things that they do for Boston. And you look at the way that Dallas has to run it, where Luka has to be the one who's setting the table for everybody. He's the guy who can create his own shot and is finding guys open.
Gotta give Kyrie some love too. We have.
Oh no, for sure. Kyrie is an immensely talented player, and he also had a really, really rough performance in Game 1. 6 of 19 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3. Allegedly, there was some fan that was giving him grief. And apparently, this is according to Mike Corman, who said this on the radio today. And apparently, it just rattled Kyrie. Obviously, the history there, we don't need to hash on that too much. It's not surprising to me that Kyrie was having problems in Boston, and I think he'll have a bounce back game in Game 2. You can't expect him to be bad this whole series. That's just not the kind of player that he is. He's immensely talented, and I expect him to bounce back a bit. But overall, what I saw was a lot of attacking on the offensive side when, you had 2 or 3 bodies getting thrown at Tatum. You saw a lot of switches where, and we talked about this a little bit before we hopped on, they were actively attacking Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Mainly with Luka, there was a couple plays where the ball would get to Jalen Brown, and then they would do a screen, and all of a sudden Luka's on Brown, and I'm like, he's about to just take him to the hole. And 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what he was doing. And even if it means, you don't want to hunt guys. Don't get me wrong. Like, you don't want to just hunt mismatches again and again and again. But if that is the main offensive facilitator for the other team, and you're constantly attacking him on the defensive end, and then you're smothering him on the other side of the court, that's going to be exhausting. And that might be the key for the Celtics to take this series down quickly, is to just these two key guys that are the focal points, the absolute fulcrums of Dallas's offense. If you constantly are attacking them on both sides of the ball, that's got to be exhausting. So, like, Dallas needs somebody else to step up besides Stotts too. And Kyrie needs to be better, sure, because that's going to alleviate that workload that you have to worry about with Luka. But if they're going to be attacking him like this, it's going to be a tough series for those two.
I mean, it's difficult for them on offense as well because they're coming up against a team that cross match, and you saw it especially in the first half. I noticed it more prevalently, I should say. I'm sure it happened in the second half, but I was looking for other things at that point. I need to go back and watch again. But Drew Holiday spent a bunch of time guarding Gafford, switching on to Lively and cross matching there. And then when the pick and roller comes for Luka, you're getting Jalen Brown off you, but you're being run into Drew Holiday. And it's just as difficult. Yeah, Luka's got a bit of a size advantage, but we know how strong Drew Holiday is. Arguably the best defensive guard in the league. Marcus Smart fans may push back there, but even if they do, it's like 1 and 2, right? It doesn't, we're nitpicking.
It's not an insult.
Yeah, it's not. But Dallas haven't faced this level of perimeter defense in the postseason, probably. They've played some really good teams. Mike Conley's a great defender. Minnesota, for me, are more of a, hey, we can take away the rim and we have some physicality elsewhere to funnel you towards that. And we're going to try and funnel you towards our two big guys. The Clippers can give you something in terms of wing defense and gap help and stuff, but they're not really going to be able to slow you down. The Thunder were probably their best bet, but the Thunder were a bit inexperienced themselves. And they were playing with house money after an amazing season. Shout out Chet Holmgren. He kind of really helped just elevate everything that Oklahoma are doing. So they come against Boston and it's like, oh, shit, there's Derek White. Okay, we got off Derek White. Oh, okay, so now Jason Tatum's guarding me. Okay, run another screen. Bang. Man, I've got Kristaps Porzingis on me. Okay, I feel good about that. Let me drive. And then you saw that one Kristaps Porzingis get switched on to Kyrie Irving. Kyrie goes into a dribble, drives. Porzingis just shuffles his feet, stays in front of him, blocking the mid-range. And it's like, dude, man, I've tried 3 different switches, and every time I've been met with a high level to elite level defender. And this is where Dallas's offense is going to face some issues because now a singles pick and roll is not going to work. You can run. And I was surprised about this as well because not a lot, but a decent portion of the Mavericks offense is based on early offense, running in 21 actions, running into drag actions. Finland, if anyone follows the newsletter, if you're on the paid plan, you would have saw me break down Finland the other day. Maybe you saw it when LeBron James and JJ Redick were talking about it on Mind the Game. But that's a staple of what Dallas run. Dallas like to run that shit, double drag, Oklahoma action. They do a lot of different stuff. They didn't do any of it. It was very much let's get up the court and then try and get into an isolation. And part of that is because how Boston switch and the way they switch kind of baits you into being that isolation team. And part of that was probably because they were shell shocked because the Celtics came out and they were just hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting. You know what I mean? And it was tough because that's demoralizing when you're playing a brand of defense that's got you this far and all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. What are you meant to do?
I also want to say too, especially when you talk about just play creation. Celtics, 23 assists to Dallas's 9. And your primary playmaker, Luka Doncic, had 1 assist on the night. They were really, really trying to put them on an island. And what I didn't get was for Dallas, like they were attacking the paint. I'll give Dallas a lot of credit. They got most of their points in the paint. But they weren't really rushing it. Like I felt like this was a game where the pace wasn't there for Dallas. because it's a really high octane offense for the Celtics, where they get out and they run, they pace the floor, they spread it out, and they created a lot of drive and kick opportunities, especially with them again committing multiple defenders to guys like Brown and Tatum. It means that somebody, if you swing the ball around enough, you're going to find somebody open on the perimeter. And I still think that the Celtics could make more 3-pointers. Like they made, I think, 16 on the night. They were, 16 of 42. And it still feels like they had a lot of shots that didn't go down, especially early on. The 3-pointers, when they at least started the first quarter, weren't exactly all going in. I think there's an opportunity for the Celtics to play even better there. But if Dallas is not able to, you're not able to really keep up with the Celtics in that regard. Like you're not going to try and beat them in a shootout. That Dallas is just not designed to do that.
I don't
So
know because I mean I will push back a little bit. They were averaging 3 possessions more per game coming into this series, so they play faster than Boston, and they also shoot as many threes as Boston. Okay,
in the postseason, right? I
yeah,
remember seeing something like that where it's like, in terms of like statistically, they're much closer to each other in the playoffs in
yeah,
terms of like
they
3-point
shoot
attempts and makes.
and makes, and Dallas plays 3 possessions per game faster than what Boston does, so they get up and down the floor considerably quicker than what the Celtics do. Now, where you're the just to kind of hammer on the point you're making is it not that Dallas are unable to go toe to toe with Boston in terms of 3-point shooting and 3-point conversion. It's that you really only have 2 or 3 guys on the Mavericks roster where you're truly trusting them to be taking those shots in transition consistently. Everyone on the Celtics is being trusted to do that. And that's when it's difficult to live with them because who do you close out to? When you're building out to the ball on your transition principles, and one possession it's Jalen Brown running the floor, and the next possession it's Sam Hauser sprinting to the corner. Who are you closing out to? What are you willing to live with? And that's the difference where Dallas will struggle to keep pace with the Celtics just because of the variance, just a different guy every time. Sorry to jump in there. I do.
No, I think that's a fair point. And I think also bringing up Dallas is like their overall playoff 3-point shooting and how that's changed a little bit. I just think, like you said with Boston, where there's so many different guys that can shoot threes, it's not like you can hone in on 2 or 3 guys and watch that, house of cards tumble down. Yeah, I had never actually got around to it. And then the whole Kevin Spacey thing happened.
Yeah,
So I was like,
that put a
it's like, yeah, better not.
yeah, it put a negative spin on it. But up until then, like the first 2 or 3 seasons are elite.
Yeah. And then that kind of,
But yeah, but like it's good, it's worth it.
but with the Celtics,
I like
I,
Designated Survivor too. Sorry.
yeah. With the Mavericks, they went 7 of 27 in game 1. I do expect them to shoot better in game 2, but I don't know. I don't love the idea of any team trying to go toe to toe with the Celtics offensively, because I think very much that this game, for all of the good shooting that the Celtics had, I still think that 1, they could shoot better, and 2, I think it was the defensive end of things where they really disrupted the Mavericks. I think that's really what swung this game 1. Because of those, they had some massive blocks. They had 9 blocks as a team total, I believe, on the night. Yeah, 9 blocks, 6 steals. The turnovers were a little bit bad, but again, I already harped on that because of Tatum. I feel like there's an opportunity for Boston to kind of swing these possessions by, having those kind of like big momentum plays where you get a block. There was a sequence with Porzingis where it was like a block, a 3-pointer, a steal. There was, another block that leads to another 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like those, if you're able to string together like a couple possessions where you have those big plays, all of a sudden the lead just starts to balloon. And that's what you kind of saw early on in the game. Now, I do wonder, like, what would you look for? Like in game 2 from Dallas, like what do you think is like their best counter punch?
Score. Stop.
You want to elaborate on that?
Got to score. We need to get stops. We need to play harder, play at a faster pace. Yeah. Just trying to do what they do on the sideline interview, right? We need to play harder. We need to get stops. Stops, all starts. We're getting stops. I'm like, dude, I heard the last guy say that. You lost that game too. Nah, jokes aside, I think that, okay, so I mentioned earlier the peel switching. One thing that the Mavericks do a lot of is peel switch. That's a switch, I have a video of it. I'll upload a video while I'm talking about it. But the pill switching is going to be big because the way that the Mavericks like to kind of bait you is they'll pill switch on a drive. And what happens then is you don't have a mismatch. You don't have anyone on your hip. Now you're attacking someone that's in front of you. So you're either going to have to try and maneuver around that person or score over them or make a read. So they like to peel switch to kind of funnel you into making a pass to the corner, right? And the problem is the Celtics are going to cook you there because they're just going to drive that baseline or they're going to swing the ball around. So adjusting the way you send help after the peel switch occurs is going to be big for them in terms of just containing the ball and making a little bit better opportunities for them to close out on you. So they're not sending 400 people at you every time because that's going to be tough. And I'm trying to find this video to upload as I'm talking and I don't remember. There we go. It's uploading now. So that on defense, I think that's going to be a big part. If you're going to encourage guys to kick the ball out to the corners, you need to make sure you can get out there and close out quick and strong. In terms of overall defense, you need to push up on the perimeter a bit more. The Mavericks invite you to shoot free. You can't do that against this team. You need to be a bit more compact, stop sending so many guys at the ball. And most importantly, numero uno is Luka Doncic needs to guard his yard. He needs to play defense with pride. Boston need to do more of what they were doing. Don't change it till it don't work no more. They have so many actions that they didn't even touch in game one that they could go to break down the perimeter defense, to drag a big away from the rim, that until they need to adjust what they're doing, they should just keep going and just slowly go deeper into their playbook. On defense or offense for the Mavs, they need to find some way of creating rotation. It felt like they were attacking a set defense every time. And whenever they did, it was basically a good offensive player to an exceptional offensive player, depending if the ball's in Luka's hands or not, against a defense that's been designed to slow you down. They knew when to send help. They knew where your spots were, so they tried to keep you away. And they lived with it when Luka made shots because as long as everybody else is struggling, Luka can go off. Right. So here's that one clip I was uploading. I've kind of moved on from this point now, but I found it and uploaded it. So here we go. So as you can see here, you got Tatum with the ball. And what's going to happen is he's going to kick it out in a second. I know he's going to drive. I don't even know where we are. Look at that pass. It's not the clip I was looking for, but just look at the pass anyway. Forget it. That was a nice pass. Do you want to know why that's a nice pass? We're going to run it again, just because of why it's a nice pass. So he's got Derek Lively on him to begin with.
Derek rotates to the corner.
Yeah.
Tatum drives.
Look
Boom.
at that. It just kicks it so far out to back to
and Drew was in that dunker spot, which pulled
Yeah.
the defender towards the basket, which means White was just wide open in the corner.
wide open, but it's the body control, dude. Like everybody's expecting that kick out to the stronger side on the like opposite end to White. They collapse. This is where I'm getting at here. If you collapse on the Celtics the way that Dallas were, I'm just running it once more just because this isn't the clip I was intending to play. So
But
I'm
it's a
doing this
pretty
on the fly.
clip.
Yeah. So watch how they collapse now. 1, 2, 3 bodies on him. Tatum just reads the floor, contorts his body, and makes the corner pass that you wouldn't expect him to make because it's the harder pass, right? He has to turn his body like 180 and then hook past that shit to get it into D White for the catch and shoot. That's what happens when you collapse. There's 3 bodies on Tatum plus 1 sending help. So now there's a lot of guys open, and that's something that the Mavericks need to avoid, and that's something the Celtics want to exploit as much as possible because that's not schematic at this point. That's principle. They've had that drill. That's habit. Like you don't change that this late because it got you to where you want it to be. You need to tweak that to contain. And that's the difference. It's can Dallas contain Boston's offense? Because we know Boston contained Dallas's, and can Dallas's offense find ways to make it life more difficult for the Celtics defense? I think the answer is yes for Dallas's offense, but I don't think the answer is yes for their defense. I just don't think they have the defensive versatility to truly live with this Celtics on that 5-out spacing when Porzingis is on the floor.
Well, and I think that's why you structure the team the way you did. This is why they went out and they added Kristaps Porzingis. And granted, you still had the concerns about health, and it took, missing all of this time for him to come back for the finals. Game 1 was the first time he'd played a game outside of the first round of the playoffs ever. They dropped that little factoid when he checked in Game 1 on last night. But I feel like with this series, this is kind of where you see this culmination of like what the Celtics have done throughout the season, where they've started to move the ball more. Tatum and Brown have both evolved as playmakers and being able to make the right reads. Derek White's taken a massive step forward. Drew Holiday kind of just putting a bow on everything and tying everything together, being a massive leader, especially during this run. And then you've added Porzingis, which is the ability to just break these teams because of his versatility. And this is kind of where you have that roster built the way you do and the depth that they have. And going against a team like Dallas that's being asked to do a lot of different things that a lot of teams, this is going to be hard for them to contend with. Like the Celtics are built to give you problems on both sides of the floor, and Dallas is learning that the hard way.
And with that, I'm going to leave it here. The Celtics should win game 2. They go on the road. They're undefeated on the road. Stays that way. It's going to be real fun. Don't stay that way. It's going to be real fun. I'm going to be happy about it either way. I will say, I expect Doncic to be way better in game 2, and I expect Kyrie to be way better in game 2. But there's guys on the Celtics roster that can turn things up too. You've seen what Drew Holiday can do when he turns it up a notch or two. We've seen Derek White play at a ridiculous level when he needs to. Tatum can turn it up 10, 11, 12 different notches from what we saw in game 1. And Jalen Brown just needs to keep doing what he's doing. Porzingis is going to keep getting better as he gets healthier. Al Horford is old, so we love him. Peyton Pritchard can do his thing, and Sam Hauser can hit lots of threes when he needs to. With that, thank you for listening.